Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Fourth and Troll Fantasy. I am Noah Selby.
And I'm Wes Selby.
And we're here for our second episode. It's going to be a great show. Wes, how you feeling?
I'm feeling wonderful. We had such a positive response for our first episode. Thank you so much, everybody, for the feedback and the compliments and following us on social media everywhere and for leaving reviews. Some of you actually left some 5-star reviews. We are so thankful for that. And Noah and I really like one review in particular.
We do.
It's a 5-star review, so it caught our attention. And I'm going to just quote it word for word, if that's fine. The review goes as this. These guys are hilarious. So thank you from user another guy.
Thank you, another guy.
We love that so much. And so if you want to leave a 5-star review, write something really funny. We love to give a shout out to our favorite funny 5-star reviews each week. And once again, thank you, though, everyone, for the feedback. We're so happy to be doing this, and we're so happy to have such positive responses. Noah, how are you after one full episode of Fourth and Troll Fantasy?
I'm feeling great, man. It really was so awesome to see such cool response come in from our first episode. I have had many fantasy league mates tell me they're going to steal my guys, which was really the downside of starting this podcast with you, but it was the only downside because everything else has been so great. So it was awesome to see just so many people gather around this podcast, really enjoy it, listen, get some advice. I saw some people that I'm in leagues with pick up Julio Jones off of the waiver wire, dude. So
let's
go. Some people are taking your advice. So it's been pretty cool. It was really awesome to see some people just going into action, listening, loving it, engaging on social media. It's been really, really cool. And I'm stoked for that to continue. We've got a great show today. We're going to look at our favorite stacks, our quarterback, running back, wide receiver, quarterback, running back, quarterback, receiver, quarterback, tight end, whatever you want to call it. That's going to be in a segment called Stack That or Smack That. And then we're going to go on from there to do our top 10 running backs and tight ends. Before we do that, though, we are only 10 days away from kickoff. It'll be 9 days by the time this airs. So, Wes, let's go through any news from the end of the preseason. What's going on?
Oh, my gosh. This is so exciting. 9 days away. I love it. So, first of all, in Houston, Damien Pierce is basically the starting running back for the Texans. Lovie Smith has yet to officially name the Texans starter, but all signs point to Damien Pierce locked up as the RB1 in Houston. He's looked great during preseason. I believe they just benched him for preseason week 2 because they just didn't want to risk any kind of injuries. So he is looking sharp in Texas.
He has looked so good. I do. Listen, I'm gonna hype myself up here a little bit, Wes, just a little bit, because I remember texting you in April after the draft, and I said I got 2 guys I'm looking at, and one of them was Damien Pierce, and I am so excited to see that he has played out and almost become this like star of the preseason as far as that stuff goes. And so I'm super excited for that. I cannot wait to have Lovie Smith hopefully do the right thing and make him the starter. I see little shades of kind of like a Lovie Smith, Matt Forte kind of vibe situation here when they were in Chicago. So it gets me super excited.
That's awesome. Yes, and he did call it. I will confirm that. Noah did project that Damien Pierce would be the Texans' running back starter week 1. Speaking of running backs, Tony Pollard in Texas as well for the Dallas Cowboys is expected to see some snaps as a slot wide receiver, which is a very peculiar situation. He's actually been going into the wide receiver meetings. So he's supposed to try to avoid eating too much into Ezekiel Elliott's carries, but Tony Pollard is going to be probably a high volume PPR target for running backs this season.
I don't blame them. He is a great talent. I know all the Tony Pollard truthers will be super excited to hear this news.
I'm one of them.
And I know you are. So I can only imagine how excited you were. I do believe Ezekiel Elliott is going to be the main guy in the backfield. I think Tony Pollard will see snaps, but to hear that Pollard might be out in the slot, taking some snaps out there and getting some work out there, just they know he is a good talent. They want to capitalize on that. And so it's pretty cool to see that. And it'll be interesting to watch what plays out there. I know Michael Gallup did avoid the PUP list. And so he may be back as soon as week 5 or week 4, maybe even sooner than that. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what plays out here.
Right. He won't be a wide receiver for Dallas, but he is going to be lining up as a receiver. In Seattle, Geno Smith is officially the Seattle Seahawks starting quarterback. Drew Lock, Geno Smith. I mean, does this change any of your projections for DK or Tyler Lockett now that it's Geno?
Oh, they're Super Bowl champions now that it's Geno, man. Yeah. I don't know what you're talking about. Listen, a little bit, not a lot, but I don't feel good, but I feel a little better about DK Metcalf now. Geno Smith is not a star by any means. I know, I get it. He never really had a great successful starting career. When he played last year in Seattle, he won like one game, I'm pretty sure. But DK Metcalf, over the 4-game span that he played where Geno Smith was the starting quarterback, went for 19 receptions, 295 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He was the wide receiver 4 over that 4-game span. Again, I don't feel good, but at the right price, I think I might I think I'd take the shot maybe just to see, and it would just be on DK. I don't feel great about Lockett, but at the right price, I feel a little better than I did about DK Metcalf now.
I feel the same. I looked at the stats for Geno and Drew. They're basically the same in their career. So it's not like there's a clear difference between the two. We'll see how it turns out. It's going to be a tough year, I think, for Seattle. But regardless, Geno Smith is a starter. Speaking of quarterbacks, Jimmy Garoppolo will stay in San Francisco, even though Trey Lance is the starter. That is big news.
Yeah, big news that came out today. I mean, I don't think it's big fantasy news, but I think we were all expecting to see Jimmy in another uniform. At least myself, I was. And so it's big news in the NFL to hear that, he restructured his contract, helped them out in the salary cap, area, that sort of thing. And he's going to stand back up Trey Lance, which, Jimmy Garoppolo has gone to a Super Bowl. He's made playoff runs. So it could help, him being there and sharing with Trey what he sees in the plays and on the field and stuff like that. So I really like the move. It would have been really weird to see Jimmy go anywhere else, I feel like. And I think we all expected it, but I like the move. I think it's a good idea to keep him back there with him being able to kind of almost be a mentor to Trey Lance. I'm not sure maybe where their relationship is at, but I'm sure he'll be able to provide some insight for him.
Yeah, possibly as a second quarterback coach for Trey Lance. That might be good for them. So there is some tragic news in the NFL. Washington Commanders rookie running back, Brian Robinson Jr. was a victim of an attempted carjacking this weekend and was shot multiple times. Robinson, I believe, was shot in the leg and the glute and is in the process of recovering. He is, I believe, on his way. He posted on social media that the surgery went well. He's in stable condition. Ron Rivera indicated on Monday that there is no specific timeline for Robinson to return to action, but they wish him the very best, and we wish him a very speedy, perfect recovery. Scary thing. I liked him a lot in preseason. He was actually a very deep sleeper for me. So just as a minor fan, very shocking to see his name pop up. Hope the best for Brian Robinson. Alexander Madison has been the subject of a trade discussion with at least 12 teams in Minnesota.
This is insane.
I don't think that's ever been true. 12 teams? I don't think Brady had that many people looking at him.
That's crazy. I mean, we've all seen Madison do well in the league and in fantasy when he's gotten his opportunities, but I'm trying to think of there 12 teams in the league who would be willing to and for him, really, I think he'd be wanting to get a bigger role. So I'm trying to think, and I'm like, I don't know who 12 teams who would. I mean, he's a great talent, so maybe 12 teams are interested. But
I have no idea.
Yeah, that is crazy.
You're telling me almost half the league is like, we got to get him on our roster.
It would be awesome to see him get a starting role somewhere. I don't know what'll happen as far as fantasy goes. If you want to roster him just in case he gets a starting job somewhere, you can if he's available. Kenny Nwangwu is the third string running back there. And if you have Dalvin Cook and you're worried that you're going to, lose Madison and lose Dalvin Cook's handcuff, one, don't drop Madison for Kenny Nwangwu, because if Madison goes somewhere, you're going to get another running back. But also, if you wanted to add somebody and stash somebody to handcuff for Dalvin Cook, it would be Kenny Nwangwu. I don't really know what to make of this news. I think I don't know if it's smoke and mirrors. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if he wants more money. I'm not sure what exactly is happening. But
at the very least, Alexander Madison is in discussion of trade talks. That's pretty much what we can glean out of it. Not the 12 teams, but keep an eye on that. Last thing, real quick bit of news. Juju Smith-Schuster has finally returned to practice. Kansas City Chiefs have their number one wideout. I know, Noah, you're excited about Juju. You have a guilty pleasure about Juju for the Chiefs this year.
It's a little bit terrifying how much I think Juju could be great. I mean, again, I know I said last episode, you talk about how Pat Mahomes doesn't like make these guys fantasy relevant. I still sort of agree there. And I still stand by what I said, but I'm also, Juju is a terrifying pick to make because you just don't know what's going to happen. But if at the end of the year you went, the guy who in his rookie season was like a super crazy talented wide receiver, and then you added him to the offense that has one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Yeah, no duh, he was a top 10 receiver. I'd say, yeah, of course. So I'm glad to see him back at practice. I know he was having knee issues. He was getting his knee drained. He was having, I don't even know what that means, but I can only imagine it's not fun. And yeah, I agree. But yeah, so it's good to see him back at practice.
Yes. So that's the news for this Tuesday. And now we're going to jump into our first segment of the episode, Stack That, Smack That. So here's what we're describing when we say stack that, smack that. As Noah said, QB, wide receiver stack from the same team. Quarterback, running back stack from the same team. Possibly wide receiver, running back. You get the idea. Two guys from the same team. You want to put them on your roster at the same time. Smack that will be you don't like the pairing. You don't think it's going to be a fantasy value. We're going to start with Noah. Noah, walk me through your stack that. Who are the two people from the same roster you want to put together in your lineup?
Yeah, I will tell you, and I'm sure it won't come as a shock to anybody who listened and caught our first episode, but my stack that for this season is going to be Tom Brady and Mike Evans.
It's not a shocker at all.
It is not a shock, but I just want to run through some things with you here. So over the last two seasons, no quarterback has more 350-plus yard passing games than Tom Brady. Over the last two seasons, only Aaron Rodgers has more passing touchdowns than Tom Brady. Aaron Rodgers has 85. Tom Brady has 83.
Wow.
Of Tom Brady's 83 touchdowns over the past two seasons, Mike Evans has accounted for 33% of them. 1/3. Every three times Brady throws a touchdown, one of them goes to Mike Evans.
Wow.
Nuts, right? Yeah, I know.
That is insane.
I know. Wes, I want to ask you a question. How many weekly finishes do you think last year's fantasy quarterback one, Josh Allen, had where he scored 24 or more fantasy points?
That Josh Allen scored?
Correct. Yeah, last year's fantasy quarterback one. How many weeks last year do you think he scored 24 or more fantasy points?
I'm going to say 8.
He had 7. He had 7 weeks. Good guess. He had 7 weeks with 24 or more fantasy points scored last season. The second most finishes in that category with 24 points or more. Do you have a guess at all at who finished first in that category?
Well, it could be Geno Smith. But
it could be.
I think I know the answer. Is it Brady?
It is. It is Tom Brady. 10 weeks last season, Tom Brady finished with 24 or more fantasy points. I don't know what more you want to make of that, but it is 10 weeks of the year last year. He was giving you such solid output. And that's the floor that right there, that 24. There were weeks of 30 plus, 35 plus in there in those 10 weeks. But 10 weeks last year, he had 24 or more fantasy points when the QB1, Josh Allen, only had 7 weeks last year with 24 or more fantasy points. This season, for the first time since Tom Brady came to Tampa Bay, Rob Gronkowski, his buddy at tight end, is not around. Now, over the last two seasons in Tampa Bay with Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski had a 16.8% target share inside the red zone over the last 2 years. Mike Evans had a 19% target share inside the red zone over the past 2 years. So with the loss of Rob Gronkowski there, we could see that go up. Mike Evans led in red zone target share, but the second guy there has now left. We could see that go up there. Over the last 2 years, Mike Evans has had a lower target share total in this offense than both Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown, yet he has finished higher than both of them in fantasy points both seasons. So, all of that being said, in a year where Mike Evans is really who I feel the only receiving option on this team, not coming back from an injury or dealing with preseason injuries or anything like that, in an offense without a player in Rob Gronkowski, who commanded nearly 17% of the targets in the red zone over the last 2 years, and an offense with a quarterback who has thrown the second most touchdowns over the past 2 seasons. And for fun, I'll mention that quarterback is the GOAT who came back out of retirement for a revenge tour and wants to win. Give me this Tom Brady, Mike Evans stack in every league I can get them in. I believe they will single-handedly win people championships this year.
It's an easy pairing. I mean, it's such a great choice for a stack that. It's Mike Evans. I mean, I think Tom Brady called him a Hall of Famer, which I don't think people would disagree with now, but I think it says a lot when Brady, after I think it was maybe 1 season. I guess it was 2 seasons he's there. So I guess after his first season, he already called him a Hall of Famer. Mm-hmm. Mike Evans could possibly be part of Brady's duos that he goes down in history with. You look at Wes Welker, Randy Moss, Julian Edelman, Rob Gronkowski. It could be Mike Evans. Mike Evans could be right there in Brady's history.
Definitely. And again, that's one last thing on this stack is that this is a stack who is going, Mike Evans is going in the 3rd round. So you're still getting 2 top tier elite players. And Tom Brady is going in the 8th round. So you don't even have to spend a high pick on this. You can still fill out your team and then add Tom Brady there in the 8th round, still get this stack, still win your leagues. I promise you, these guys will win championships this year.
He promises you.
I promise you.
That's a guarantee.
Promise you. It's a Noah Selby guarantee.
Fantastic.
Let's move on here. Complaints. That was no complaints, but let's move on here. That was my stack that, Wes. Give me your stack that. Who are you stacking up this year?
I went with a quarterback and a tight end instead of a receiver. However, it's very easy to argue this guy is a wide receiver. This is the Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce stack that.
I thought you might have been about to say Patrick Mahomes and Blake Bell, but yes, Travis Kelce. Yeah, Travis Kelce. And Patrick
that's
Mahomes
not
there.
This year, Noah. That's 2025.
Right. Okay.
Kelce's still on the team.
Right.
So I don't have to explain how good Mahomes and Kelce are together. We know this. But I do want to point out some very important stats just from Travis Kelce. He has had 6 straight 1,000-yard seasons. He has the 2nd most receiving yards combined since 2017, only to Devontae Adams. He was the highest scoring tight end from 2016 through 2020. That is tight end 1 4 years in a row. He was only 2nd last year to Mark Andrews. So there's that. Okay. But there is just a little worry, I think, from people who wonder, are the defenders just going to swarm Kelce now that Tyreek Hill is gone? Are they just going to send 6 guys to cover him? Well, there was a moment back in 2019, I'm going to take it back, when Tyreek Hill left after 2 catches in week 1, and he was out for 5 games. I'm counting that first game as a full game out because it was 2 catches. Cool. How did Travis Kelce do without Tyreek Hill? He had 439 yards and a touchdown, and he averaged 15.5 points per game. If that's your average for a tight end, I think you're going to do fine. And that was with Sammy Watkins as the number 1 wide receiver for Kansas City at the time. Now, that's no knock on Sammy Watkins. He actually did pretty well that season for fantasy. But I argue Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdes-Scantling are much more viable threats to the secondary. They're going to have to draw away coverage. So anybody who's worried that Kelce is going to have everybody and their mom covering him in the secondary, he's going to do fine. Okay. The only thing I have to mention is this is a bit of an expensive stack in draft capital. because Travis Kelce is a second-round pick and Mahomes is a third-round pick.
Right.
You would have to commit to that. And I think you would have to be in a position where you are comfortable to take a tight end and a quarterback in your first 3 picks in the draft, which is a risk.
Wow.
However, these aren't just any ordinary tight ends or quarterbacks. This is the best tight end in fantasy and arguably the best quarterback in fantasy. And quite possibly every single offensive touchdown is coming through Mahomes, and you're going to double that up with Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
That's a lot of points. I'll say it.
That is a lot of points, man. That's a lot of points. I like this stack. I hear what you're saying on the expensive price of getting this stack. But you cannot deny the numbers. What was that stat you just said? He is second all time since 2017 in combined receiving yards. Totaling every receiving yard from last season all the way back to 2017, more than any receiver, more than Tyreek Hill, more than anybody except Devontae Adams by 50 yards, by the way. I mean, that's great company. That you can't deny that is a appetizing stack to feast your eyes on. Oh man, you're making me think about it now. I'm like,
I got myself thinking about it.
Yeah, and I'm more of a guy who's like, wait on quarterback with all that sort of stuff. Man, that stack is delicious, is what it sounds like.
It's delicious.
I cannot wait to. This year with Travis Kelce is going to be crazy. With like you make a great point. These other receivers there are going to draw a little more attention than Sammy Watkins may have, and so. I think there's a lot of concern of, like you said, does everyone just swarm Kelce? I think it's a little more spaced out here. I think if anything, I think a lot of people last year were playing this too deep safety thing to kind of contain the Chiefs a little bit. We saw them a little bit contained. I think they're going to go back to kind of how they used to play them before last year with Tyreek Hill. And so I think, there's going to be space, and Travis Kelce finds space. And I don't know if you remember Chiefs Chargers on primetime, but he called his shot and won that game on the catch and run. And that I saw him catch it and I went, oh, nice. First down. Oh my gosh. Yep. And he just, he is that guy who, he may be a little older now, but he can still take a 15-yard pass and run 40 yards with it and win you and the Kansas City Chiefs a game. And so I like that, man. I like that stack. It's quite appetizing.
Yeah, I think it's possibly the best stack. Mike Evans Brady is fantastic as well. You know who we don't like?
Who?
Let's talk about it. Smack that. These are the quarterback, running back combos, QB, wide receiver combos. We don't want to pair them up. This will be very interesting. Noah, kick things off. Who is your smack that for this season?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So my smack that for this season is Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. I know. Really? It's crazy. But Noah, this is a stack with your number 1 quarterback and your number 3 wide receiver. How is it a smack that? I'll tell you how.
Yeah.
We covered it just a little bit ago. It's all about the ADP on this one for me. It's all about the ADP. You are spending a second and a third round pick to make this stack happen. And call me crazy, but I don't know if it's going to be worth it. In doing this, you put yourself in a situation to miss out on guys in the third round like Aaron Jones, James Conner, Javonte Williams, Mike Evans, Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley. And depending on how the first round of your draft went, if you took a wide receiver there, you could be looking at guys to be your running back 1, guys like Cam Akers, Ezekiel Elliott, or David Montgomery. And don't get me wrong, these guys will be fine for fantasy, but I wouldn't feel great about those guys as my RB1, even if I had Josh Allen or Stephon Diggs. And so with this one, it's all about value to me. It's all about the value, really, in fantasy in general for me. Who is the best value in a round for me? And 9 times out of 10, that's who I'm going to go with. So forcing myself to take Josh Allen to complete this stack in the third round just isn't what I'm wanting this year for my fantasy team. And so that is why Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs this year are my smack that.
That is a very fascinating point because just as you said at the top, Josh Allen is your QB1. Stephon Diggs, wide receiver 3. Is that who you have him as?
He is. Stephon Diggs is my wide receiver 3 this year.
That's a very fascinating approach and perspective to this, because that is first and second just to have that combination. And I think you make a great point that there can be a better balance to your team. That's something that we'll talk about many times, is having that strong depth and balance to a roster. You sounded crazy when you started out saying, I don't want to have Allen and Diggs on my team.
I know.
However, it's I can't say I would ever find myself willing to draft Diggs and Allen. I got myself thinking about Kelsey and Mahomes.
Yeah, I think it's a little different there just because Kelsey is a tight end. And so he does, it is such that tight end is such a scarce position, man. And so if you can, and especially it's very situational with this offense. I think you and I both are projecting most of the touchdowns coming through, like you said, Patrick Mahomes. And I think a lot of them go to Travis Kelce. And so I think that one's a little different just because you are locking in one of the top tight ends, top 2 for sure in fantasy, and getting his quarterback with him, you're able to get those doubled up points. If even you look at it this way, Patrick Mahomes throws a 20-yard touchdown pass to Travis Kelce. You're now looking at that is a 9-point play just from Travis Kelce. And then you get 4 points from Mahomes. You get whatever the yardage was there for, I think it might have been 1 point for that. So you're looking at nearly a 14-point play from one touchdown for your fantasy team. And so in that, you look at that and you think that tight end quarterback combo there in Kansas City, I think that is something you may consider worth doing here with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Wide receiver is so deep. Deep. You can get Mike Evans in the 3rd round, who I just talked about, Tom Brady in the 8th round, who I just talked about, And so when it comes down to this smack that for me, it really is all about the ADP. I'm not comfortable taking Josh Allen in the 3rd round to complete this stack for me. And then maybe, risking getting, somebody I don't feel confident in as my RB1. And so that is why, again, these are 2 extremely elite talented players. But I am staying away from these guys as far as the stat goes this year.
Fair enough, Noah.
Fair enough. I mean, that's just me, though. What about you, Wes? Who is your smack that for this season?
I don't know if people are still on this hype train, but my smack that is Kyler Murray and Marquise Brown. Mm-hmm. There were some people on a little bit of a hype, some kind of theory that Hollywood Brown was going to walk into Arizona, and with DeAndre Hopkins suspended for 6 games, he and Kyler Murray were going to tear it up, 50-yard plus touchdowns every game. And by the time DeAndre Hopkins comes back, he and Hollywood Brown have built such a connection, there's no one stopping them. They're going to be incredible. So my response is, first of all, no. I went through last season, okay? I'm going to spit a little numbers here. I won't take too long, but it's important to look at why Hollywood Brown is not going to be that amazing in Arizona. So Kyler Murray spread the ball like wildfire as soon as DeAndre Hopkins went out with an injury. He finished the season with 6 players that had at least 50 targets. Lamar Jackson, when Marquise Brown was with him last year, Lamar Jackson had 2 guys he threw the ball to. He threw it to Mark Andrews and he threw it to Marquise Brown. He threw it to Mark Andrews 153 times, which is partly why Mark Andrews finished as number 1 and Travis Kelce didn't. He threw it to Marquise Brown 146 times. The next highest targeted player on the Ravens was thrown to 68 times.
Wow.
So Marquise Brown has already had the incredible volume. He still only finished as wide receiver 22 with 146 targets. And even still, Christian Kirk for the Cardinals was less than 20 fantasy points behind him with 42 fewer targets and 14 less receptions. And that's half PPR stats that I looked at. So a guy that had just barely 100 receptions was that close to guy, or 100 targets, was that close to guy with 146 targets. There is no way Marquise Brown is going to go to Arizona and succeed as the number one receiver because he didn't do it that well in Baltimore. Real quick, jumping back to 2020, when DeAndre Hopkins was fully healthy, Kyler Murray targeted him 160 times. That was the second most targets of 2020, and DeAndre Hopkins finishes wide receiver 4. So after 6 weeks, Marquise Brown is certainly not going to be a guy that is going to explode as a great sleeper pick in the 6th round. You know who you can get in the 6th round, especially when DeAndre Hopkins comes back 6 weeks later? You can get, one, Kyler Murray. You can get him in the 6th round. Make no mistake, I'm not saying don't draft Kyler Murray. I think he's fantastic. You should draft him. You don't get Marquise Brown if you're going to get Kyler Murray. You can get instead Courtland Sutton, who's right there. You can get Dalton Schultz, who's right there. You can get Travis Etienne. You could even look at Amon-Ra St. Brown. So you can have someone that is a clear, valuable asset to their team. Courtland Sutton, we've already talked about him last time. I think he's going to be amazing. Dalton Schultz is going to be great. All these guys, the value, you talked about it with your Smack That Noah, the value, he's not a sleeper pick. Kyler Murray spreads the ball around. It's only D-Hop that he's going to throw it to. And plus, Kyler Murray likes to run it, just like Lamar Jackson did. That's my Smack That. Don't talk about Marquise Brown with me.
I hear you. You are heard.
Thank you.
I want to... I don't know. I'm conflicted on how I feel about this Smack That. Coming into the season, I didn't think, I wasn't, draft night, the Marquise Brown trade happened. And I thought, I don't really know if that's, going to be a huge thing. And there are other people in the fantasy community who are really big on Marquise Brown. And I feel like I've sort of been trying to, I've been convincing myself a little bit of Marquise Brown. I don't know. I think there are pieces of this that are right. I think that the first 6 weeks he's going to be so good. And I think, we think back to last year and there were still the games where we kind of treated Christian Kirk a little bit like Tyler Lockett last year, where it was like, it's going to be hot. It's going to be cold. If you believe in him, you play him. If you don't, you don't. I think Marquise Brown, I think it's fair to say, is a more talented football player than Christian Kirk. Whenever DeAndre Hopkins comes back, I could see him playing, that role a little more than just being kind of like that wide receiver 1 throughout the first 6 weeks. I don't know how I feel. I'm indifferent on your Smack That. I don't know if you should smack it or if you should stack it, or I don't know.
Just look at the math, baby. Them's the maths, baby.
The numbers work well. It'll be interesting to see. I don't think you're probably too far off. I think it could really go either way on this. Either way, I don't think I would. Actually, I agree with you for the segment. I'm not going to stack them. So I'm with you there.
Okay.
And I think, it's going to be. I'm so confused by the Arizona Cardinals wide receiver room situation. I don't know. I'm going to burst a brain cell trying to break this down too
much. Draft Kyler Murray.
Draft Kyler.
Be fine. If you want to draft Marquise Brown.
Draft Kyler or draft Marquise Brown. I don't know. You need to stack them.
Don't stack them.
I don't know if that will be as valuable for you as some others.
No.
Yeah, I agree. That leads us into actually, it's not even a great segue, but I'm just going to use it as a segue. Because we're going to smack that segment off to the side. We're going to go into, you like that one? That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Don't. Decent recovery, if you ask me. Last week, we broke down our top 10 quarterbacks and wide receivers for the season. We want to cover all the positions for you as quickly as we can. We know you are drafting this week if you haven't already drafted. So this week, we're going to go over our top 10 running backs and tight ends. Wes, really quick, run us over your top 10 running backs.
So a while back, I have to give you credit for my RB1 of the season, Noah. A while back, we were ranking these, trying to figure out who we liked. Of course, as the season goes on, it changes. It's always changing. It never stops changing. But Noah made an excellent point that I want to kind of share with everyone. If they're not injured, who's the best? If they play all 16 or 17 games, who's the best? Yep. That is why Christian McCaffrey is still RB1 for this season. There's the scare that he's going to get injured. Sure. Now, we can look at the headlines. We can read what he's been saying, what the staff has been saying, what the offensive coordinator has been saying, what Matt Rule has been saying. They're all focusing on his health and his durability. Of course, he can still get injured. But when Christian McCaffrey is on the field, there is not a better fantasy player in the whole NFL. Yeah. He's amazing. He's unstoppable. His floor feels like it's 25 points. Yeah. So he's number one. He just has to be number one. And I will confidently draft him as the RB1 if I have to have a running back right there. Now, I've told you I'm high on Justin Jefferson, but I could take Christian McCaffrey as my first pick in the draft. Yeah, I have no problem risking that. Going down the list, I'm just going to go 2 all the way down to 10. So number 1, Christian McCaffrey. Number 2, Najee Harris. 3, Javonte Williams. Then I have Jonathan Taylor.
Down at 4.
At number 4. Wow. And I have Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, Dalvin Cook, the resurrection of Saquon Barkley at RB8, Alvin Kamara, and then I have Austin Eckler as number 10.
Wow. I mean, I think I gotta jump at it real quick and get a little explanation here. I think you are a bit higher than the consensus in the fantasy world, having Najee Harris at your RB2. Let me know. Talk your talk. Tell me why he is going to be the RB2 at the end of the season.
So, of course, he has a little bit of a foot thing going on, injuries aside. Now, I'm not scared about the foot, but I will acknowledge that going into week 1, he has a minor injury happening. The only other concern I have for Najee Harris is that Steelers O-line looks pretty stinky poopy diaper garbage. But Najee Harris can still work around it. We saw what he did last year.
Sorry, that one got me.
We saw what he did last year with pretty much the same line. And Big Ben, who was barely breathing at the end of that career. So that aside, watch Najee Harris. That's all I have to say. Watch Najee Harris highlights. Watch how good he is. He is power and he is lightning. He is thunder. He is strength. He is everything you want in a man. Ka-chow. When I watch him, ka-chow. When I watch him, he is like a Steven Jackson. He's like a prime Steven Jackson to me. Mm-hmm. He is fast and agile, and he will also truck into a guy. He will stiff arm a guy. He has every running back strength at his disposal. And that, for me, going into a second year in a very good organization with a very, very good head coach, I think Najee Harris has a very, very good potential to not just be RB2, but be a league winner, to be the best fantasy pick you take. Any of these other guys are very worth taking, but that is why just watching him, it's not a mathematical reason. Just watch his highlights. He's unbelievably good, dude.
Yeah. No, I feel you. I a while ago coming into this season, I was pretty low on Najee Harris. I was like almost, I'll dare say, like embarrassingly low. I believe I had him around like RB19 coming into the year. Don't roast me. I have adjusted because I realized I think I was placing too much value on what I projected his receiving work to be for this year. Obviously Ben Roethlisberger hyper targeted him last year because, as we talked about, stinky poopy diaper butt, that O-line is not very good. And so this is so immature. I can't believe we're doing this on our podcast, but I love it. So anyways, that O-line was not good. Najee got targeted like 90, I believe it was 93 or 94 times last season. I really was projecting that to be lower for this season. I still think it is, but I was placing too much value on that receiving game. I did some math and I just dropped it down. I said, give him the same amount of rushing work, same amount of rushing productivity from last year, and cut his receiving work by a fourth, give him like only whatever it was, maybe 50 receptions or something like that. And I dropped it down and he was still like RB5 last year or something like that. It was still great. He still had numbers for that. Granted, we had some injuries last year. McCaffrey wasn't, a factor in the top 10. Henry wasn't a factor in the top 10. I have Najee right now as my RB9, still inside my top 10. He will still be very good in fantasy football, but I do not have him at 2. So I like it. Call your shot. I'm a fan. I like the bold takes.
Thank you. And I will also mention that Mike Tomlin and the rest of the Steelers offensive staff are trying to give him a snap count. Not too hard, but they are very, very careful of making sure he is healthy on every play. So he may come out a few times. He's not going to risk any touchdowns that way, but they are focused, just like the Panthers are with McCaffrey. They are focused on making sure he's playing every single game, all 4 quarters.
They are. Yeah, they are. I want to go into something real quick, just because running back is such a valuable position in fantasy. We give the top 10s, but Wes, I want to give you an opportunity. Maybe if you want to pick out one guy outside your top 10 that you are really high on. I can give a guy and then we can move on here, but just because we are, we want to provide the best content. Yeah. And so we want to, running running back is not deep, but running back is a big position in fantasy to have. And so we want to go over some more guys here. Give me one guy outside your top 10 that you're super excited about.
Absolutely. And I think, just to refer back to what we were talking about earlier with balance, Noah and I are very high on having 2 solid running backs, because the wide receiver position is so deep, and you can get someone a few weeks into the season, they can be a great player for your playoff run. I think one of the most exciting running backs I would like to draft as often as I can is going to be Travis Etienne for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Mm-hmm. Finally ready. He's healthy. He's got that chemistry with Trevor Lawrence, and it's Doug Peterson, so the Urban Meyer stank is pretty much left. He's so good. He's also like Najee Harris. You watch him, he's so elusive. He's much more elusive. I would describe him as a more agile running back. He is quick. He is shifty. He is a guy that I think is going to be very, very good yards after the catch. Trevor Lawrence dumps it off to him. That guy can turn a 4-yard pass into 20, 30, maybe 40-yard catch and run. I think he's got a very high potential, especially because I think you told me, what was his grade coming out of the combine? Wasn't it insane?
I agree with
99.
Yeah, out of the combine, he had a 99 combine grade. That was in the conversation with guys like your number 2 running back, Najee Harris, Derrick Henry. Those guys, Travis Etienne had a 99 combine grade. And so he is definitely, I was bummed we didn't get to see him last year. I'm also excited for him this year. I've got him as my RB15. I think he is going to far outperform that, I believe. I've got him as an RB15. He's currently going in ESPN drafts as RB21. So I've got him outperforming that ADP where he's going. One guy for me, I think, and I can't believe he is going where he's going, is AJ Dillon. Green Bay Packers, what we will say, second string running back, but from what we've heard, it very well could be a bit of a timeshare here and maybe a bit of a split. Aaron Rodgers is on record saying that AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones both could get 50 targets this year. And so it's definitely somebody that I am looking at. AJ Dillon, we saw him last year when Aaron Jones went down. He is a pure runner. He's so good, and he is so good at catching the ball. He is such a good pass catcher as well. He is currently going in ESPN drafts as RB32. I have him finishing the season as my RB18. I have him going way better than that. And so I cannot believe he's going there. I believe in like the 10th or 11th round. He is a guy that I am super excited about this year as far as running backs outside our top 10 goes.
I think AJ Dillon is a really exciting pick because I do not think, unlike most running back committees, I don't think Aaron Jones actually AJ Dillon cuts into Aaron Jones's time. I think AJ Dillon is just another really good fantasy option. As you said, Aaron Rodgers is going to try to throw him the ball a lot. He's almost one of my guys. He's just got such a great upside.
He Absolutely was in the conversation to be a my guy for me as well. So I definitely feel you on that.
Yeah. So those are the running backs. Look for the graphic of my top 10 running backs as we're going to look also at Noah's top 10 tight ends going into the season. Walk us through, why is your number one the number one? Who's in the top 10? Tell us why you have them where they're at, Noah.
Happy to. I'm happy to go over some of what I have been calling this year the toitest ends in the league.
The toitest ends?
The toitest ends. They're only the toitest of the toitest.
Toitest ends?
So these are my top 10 tight ends for the 2022 fantasy football season. Number one, I have Mark Andrews. I know it's a bit of a toss-up here between Kelce or Andrews. I don't blame you either way you want to go. I lean Andrews simply because of the opportunity. There are 195 vacated targets in the Baltimore Ravens offense. This passing game is going to go through him. Again, similar to the Chiefs, I just have Andrews a little bit higher. So I have him as my tight end 1. At 2, I have Travis Kelce. At 3, I have Dalton Schultz, tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. I know you're expecting maybe to hear Kyle Pitts, maybe George Kittle, maybe Darren Waller. I know, I get it. I think Dalton Schultz is a great, again, a big guy on opportunity. I think Dalton Schultz is a great opportunity this year to be a great tight end for fantasy football. There are 165 vacated targets in this Dallas Cowboys offense. With the departure of Amari Cooper, with the departure of Cedric Wilson, I believe that Dalton Schultz becomes the second option in this high-powered passing offense, just behind CeeDee Lamb. Dalton Schultz, I believe his ceiling is a bit capped. I don't think he's the kind of guy who's going to, have the crazy athletic plays and take, like Travis Kelce, take a 10-yard, 15-yard pass and catch and run for another 40 yards. But I do believe Dalton Schultz will be able to dink and dunk his way to solid fantasy production for you week by week. Honestly, it would not surprise me if he finishes with double-digit touchdowns because of the kind of player he is. And so I believe that he is going to be the tight end 3. That's where I have him at. My tight end 4 is Kyle Pitts. My tight end 5 is George Kittle. My tight end 6 is Darren Waller. Yes, he is behind Kyle Pitts. He is behind George Kittle. It's for the reason you think it is. Devontae Adams is in this offense now. I think he is going to be the alpha target for Derek Carr. They have the rapport from college. I think he's going to go ahead and be the main guy for Derek Carr. I think Darren Waller is not going to be getting 19 targets in a game like we saw last year in week 1. And so I do believe that he will finish he'll still be a top 10 fantasy tight end. I've got him at tight end 6. I've read a little bit. There are some potential contract disputes. I know that up until last week, he had only practiced 1 time since July 30th, whether that be injury. Some people are saying it's injury and a little bit of contract conversation. I'm not entirely sure, but I do have Darren Waller at tight end 6. At tight end 7, I have TJ Hawkinson. At tight end 8, I have Zach Ertz. I believe with no DeAndre Hopkins for the first 6 weeks, Zach Ertz could very well be a top 3 tight end to start the season. And I don't mean he's going to have, again, these big explosive plays, but I do believe he could get you to a top 3 tight end performance and production throughout the first 6 weeks just by getting, these 6 receptions for 60 yards and a touchdown games. You get those and it's, you're looking at an 18-point performance from your tight end. And I think he can do that throughout this first 6 games for sure. But I do think once Hopkins comes back, he mellows out a little bit. I've got him at tight end 8. At tight end 9, I have Dallas Goedert. And then at tight end 10, I have Cole Kmet. And I know that's going to be maybe a little high for some people, but I believe Cole Kmet is in a fantastic situation, being in an offense where he's going to be the second option in a very frequently pass-friendly game script offense. It wouldn't surprise me if he averaged like 10 targets a game in this offense. I think Justin Fields will rely on him as a trusty target. I do believe Cole Kmet will finish in the top 10. He is my tight end 10 on the season. Those are the toitest ends for the 2022 fantasy season.
I'm also pretty high on Cole Kmet. I think he is a great sleeper option for tight ends. Yeah. You said it's a toss-up between Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews. For me, I defer to Kelce. Mark Andrews is also very reasonably the number 1 tight end for the season. I, too, am going to back you up on Dalton Schultz. I think he is basically the second receiver option in Dallas. I think Dalton Schultz proved that he did very well last season. I just want to hear your thoughts on Kyle Pitts, because this is basically where we expected him last season for his rookie year. Yeah. You think that Marcus Mariota unlocks what we should have seen last year, or do you think it's just another year under his belt that Kyle Pitts finally has the Kyle Pitts that we've been waiting for?
I think he scores more than one touchdown this year is really what it is. That's
really worse.
That capped him so much last season. He had, there's a video going around that's like Kyle Pitts 2021 touchdown compilation. And it's just the touchdown from London. And then the video ends. And that was it. It's just, I think he gets into the end zone more. Video. I think Arthur Smith, their head coach, recognizes, hey, he's our best offensive threat. Let's get him the ball. Let's get him the touches that he needs. Let's get him the end zone targets. And so I think, and like I said, he is a freak athlete. He's a tight end that runs like a 4.4. It's ridiculous. He is so good. He's so talented. He's athletic. I think it can be a game breaker. I think he can go ahead and you can send him on a fly route, wind up out wide. And I think he will moss a corner and he can take it into the end zone for 60 yards or something like that. I think he has that potential. And so that's why I've got Kyle Pitts as my tight end 4. Again, the price on him is a little much for me. And so I like I've said throughout this entire episode, I'm big on the value. And so for that reason, I've got Kyle Pitts there as my tight end 4.
Yeah. And just one more point before we wrap this up. Kyle Pitts has also been exclusively lining up as a wideout. So he's going to be lining outside by the marker for some deep throws from Mariota or whoever the quarterback's going to be at the end. So he's going to be exclusively a wide receiver in Atlanta. So I think there is a very good upside to what he does in fantasy.
Yeah, sign me up for all of that. I'm excited to see Kyle Pitts. Like I said, a little pricey for me, but I'm stoked to watch him. And so, yeah, those are the tight ends. Those are our running backs. This has been episode 2 of 4th and Troll Fantasy. Thank you guys so much for listening. Wherever you are listening, we'd appreciate it if you give this episode and this podcast 5-star review if you enjoyed it. Like you heard in the beginning, if you leave a funny review, we might give you a little bit of a shout out here. We're on social media everywhere at 4th and Troll on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. On Facebook, you can find us at 4th and Troll Fantasy. Look for our mascot, Tutty the Troll. Make him smile by giving us a follow and joining us next time every Tuesday and Friday. I'm Noah Selby.
And I'm Wes Selby.
And this has been 4th and Troll Fantasy.